natin ang suliranin ng lipunan. Kooperatiba may kalagayan, sandigan ng sambayanan. Kapit kamay natin, tahakin ang landas, tungo sa hanggan, kinabukasan. Kooperatiba may kalagayan, sandigan ng sambayanan. Ipagalali natin sa mundo, nagtulungan, nagkakaisa tayo. Walang puwang ang pag-aalinlangan, bawat ang tiyak ang pagtutunguhan. Mga pusong laging pag-asa ang taglay, abot kamay silanis ng tagumpay. Kooperatiba may kalagayan, sandigan ng sambayanan. Kapit kamay natin, tahakin ang landas, tumulong sa hanggan, kinabukasan. Kooperatiba may kalagayan, pinagkakalanang may tapat. Ipagalali natin sa mundo, nagtulungan, nagkakaisa tayo. Rasyo tayo sa mundo, isang bansa, kooperatiba tayo.
Una sa tanan, gusto ko gid tamyamon ang katapo sang sininga ang Diyos Gugma Development Cooperative siyang maayong hapon sa ila. So ginatamyaw ko man ang maanyag nga manager sang aton nga kooperatiba nga si Ma'am Lydia Malabanhot. Ginatamyaw ko man ang amon nga regional director in the person of Nora P. Patron, PhD, kag ang amon nga mga office mates sa CDA. Kag natamyaw ko man ang tanan-tanan nga nagapalamati, nagatanaw sang Diyos Gugma Station DYDA 10:53 AM nga ini makita man naton at the same time sa Cable Stars Channel 43 kag live stream sa aton nga ang Diyos Gugma Facebook Live. So again, no, kahapon nangin bisita ako sang ang Diyos Gugma Development Cooperative sa ila pagsaulog sang ika-15 ka tuig nga paghiwat sang ginatawag naton nga Annual General Assembly. Kag gusto ko man ipaabot again and again ang pagpasalamat sa ang Diyos Gugma Development nga ginhatagan niya tsansa ang CDA sa pag-host sang sini nga programa ORAS sang Kooperatiba. So this is the second episode sang aton nga partnership sa programa. So sang nagligad nga February 19, 2022 during our first episode, may gin-share kami nga tatlo gid ka pinaka-importante, tama ka-importante nga memorandum circular nga kinahanglanon gid sang tagsa-tagsa ka kooperatiba para maging effective and efficient ang aton nga pag-operate sang aton kooperatiba. So iliwaton ko lang, just a reminder, nag-discuss kita ka procedure in the submission of annual tax incentive report, calendar year, no? Kung calendar year ang aton gina-follow sa aton cooperative, ang deadline naton is April 30. Kung ang fiscal year ang gina-follow naton sa aton kooperatiba, ang deadline sa pag-submit sang report ang April 15, 2023. So ang isa pa gid ka memorandum circular nga discuss naton last time, among ginatawag nga guidelines prescribing the requirements for the issuance of certificate of compliance. So siling naton ang COC tama ka importante pasaporte naton ni kundiin kita nagatransaksyon nga mga agencies. So ang deadline sang submission or issuances amo ang April 30. So may ara man nga gin-discuss nga revised guidelines implementing the training requirements of cooperative officers. Ini tama ka importante kay isa ini sa mga requirements nga kinahanglanon nga maisyuhan kita sang certificate of compliance. So sa sini nga hapon may ara kita naman, no? Tupiko nga gusto naton i-discuss. But before that, mahatag lang ko anay gamay nga CDA updates nga sugiran ta kamo nga naka-meeting na ang ginatawag nato nga National Coordinating Committee for Cooperative Development, no, sang February 15 sa Convention Center sa Quezon City. No, may 20 gid ka national agencies ang nag-join sa amo nga meeting. So ini isa man ni ka consultative body nga sa diin diri ginapamatian man naton kay balaan mo ang nag-attend sini nga mga agency may mga plans and programs nga para gid sa aton nga mga kooperatiba. So manami ato nagsugod na, and I hope nga maka-benefit kita sang mga plans and programs ka nagkalain-lain nga mga ahensya sang gobyerno. Kag gina-encourage ta gid kamo nga mag-visit gid permi sa CDE website regarding sa mga lista sa mga cooperative training provider. Kay ini sila nagahatag mga mandatory training sa aton nga mga small, medium, and large cooperatives. And makita man naton ang listahan sa mga cooperative external auditors kaysa subong, no, kinahanglanon gid ang ila sini nga pagbulig sa cooperative kay ini sila amo nagapirma sang aton nga audited financial statement. So sa subong nga hapon sa second episode sang aton nga partnership with the cooperative, ang Diyos Gugma Development Cooperative, may topic kita subong nga i-discuss. So kung nabasahan ninyo sa Akta Republika, may ara kita ginatawag nga administration. Makita naton sa Chapter 4 sang Republic Act 9520, the Philippine Cooperative Code of 2008. So out of this provision sa aton nga Akta Republika, may mga related memorandum circulars nga i-discuss ang aton subong nga resource person, no, nga karon sa hapon, no, gwapa ni siya nga aton nga resource person kag na-assign siya sa registration section. So ang administration ginatawag nato ni siya, no, importante gid nga maintindihan tani kung ano ang tinaga nga administration. Simple lang gid, no, isa ni siya ka proseso or aktibidades nga sa pagpadalagan sang aton nga business o kon sa pagpadalagan sa aton nga kooperatiba. Kag makita naton ini siling ko sa Chapter 4 halin sa Articles 32 dangat sa Article 50. So just a rundown kung ano ang makita naton sa provision sa Article 30, ginadefine na da ang General Assembly. Dito sa layi ginadescribe naton nga ang General Assembly is composed of members who are entitled to vote under the Articles of Cooperation and Bylaws of Cooperatives. Makita man naton to ang ginatawag naton nga powers of the General Assembly nga amo ni usually ang gina-exercise naton during the annual General Assembly. So dapat kompleto gid ni ara gid sa aton nga paghiwat sang tuigan nga meeting sa aton nga kooperatiba. Kay nga ano ni siyang tatlo, determine and approve the amendments of the Articles of Cooperation and Bylaws, Dira man kita naga-elect or naga-appoint kag naga-remove sa mga board of directors kag ang pag-approve naton sang aton developmental plans sa cooperatives. Ang tatlo nga ini exclusive powers sang aton nga pinakapataas nga policy making body sa aton nga kooperatiba. Diri man naton makita kung ano nga klase ka meetings ang ginahiwat naton sa aton nga kooperatiba, ang pagdetermine sang quorum, ang voting system, ang composition and terms of BODs, ang powers sa mga junta direktiba, ang aton directors, meeting of the board of directors and quorum, vacancy in the board of directors, officers, committees of the cooperatives, functions and responsibilities of training requirements of directors, officers, and committee members. Diri man naton makita kung ano ang liability of directors, officers, and committee members, compensation, dealing of directors, officers, or committee members, disloyalty of director, illegal use of confidential information, and removal. Meaning, siling ko, halin sa Article 32 to 50. Kag ang related memorandum circulars, i-discuss ni Ms. Myla Horao sang registration section. So, paamanan niya ni sang MC 2015-01 o kung unahon niya ni ang MC 2015-01. Sige, May.
Salamat, Ma'am. Mayong hapon sa tanan, no, sa mga gapalamati kag nagkatanaw sang sininga programa, no. Ang una, no, bali Ma'am Mercy, ang ako nga ang tupiko subo nga hapon amo ang administration, no, nga ara sa chapter 4 sang ato na RA 9520 kag very timely gid ini, no, kay subong ga-held na sa mga General Assembly ang ato nga mga kooperatiba. Ang nauna gid amo ang Article 32, amo ni ang composition sang aton General Assembly. Magsilinggan ni kita composition, sino inibala sila. Gina-compose ini sang members who are entitled to vote under the Articles of Cooperation and Bylaws sang inyong mga kooperatiba. Then, ara man nakapagkit sa aton Article 33, kung anong mga powers ng aton General Assembly, no? Sa nasiling kainan ni Ma'am Mercy, ang tatlo ato ka powers, nga exclusive lang, no? Nga powers ng GA, nga hindi pwede ma-delegate. Kag una-una, ang General Assembly naton, amoy na ang pinaka-highest policy-making body sa aton kooperatiba. Kag mag-exercise ini sang powers, nga stated sa aton nga code, which is the RA 9520. Amo ini ang tatlo ka exclusive powers niya, no, nga ginhambal na kainan ni Ma'am Mercy, to determine and approve amendments to the Articles of Cooperation and Bylaws, to elect or appoint the members of the Board of Directors, and to remove them for cause, no. Si General Assembly lang niya ang pwede ka-elect sa members ng Board of Directors. And then, to approve developmental plans of the cooperative. Kag subject sa other provisions ng code only for purposes of prompt and intelligent decision making, ang General Assembly by a 3/4 vote of all its members with voting rights, no, with voting rights present and constituting a quorum, delegate some of its powers to a smaller body of the cooperative. This power shall be enumerated under the bylaws of the cooperative, no. Nang taon tagig kung dira na siya na enumerate sa aton nga bylaws. And then, ang Article 35, about ini sa quorum. Ang quorum natin will be at least 25% of all the members entitled to vote. No? Entitled to vote. Pero, depende ina sa inyo bylaws. Lantaw ninyo digto kung pila ang inyo nga quorum. Kay iban, hindi lang 25% ila ginabutang. Mayara 40%, 60%. Amo na nga pagkalantaw natin. Pero, ang at least 25% pwede na sa kung amo nang nakabutang sa inyo bylaws. Under sa Article 6, amo ni ang aton nga ginatawag nga voting system. Kung ara kita sa isa ka primary nga kooperatiba, ang aton nga boto shall only have one vote. Kay may ara kita nga 1-1-1 vote sa aton nga kooperatiba. Kung sa case naman sang secondary or tertiary nga cooperatives, they shall have one basic vote and as many incentive votes as provided for in the bylaws not to exceed 5 votes para iniya sa mga tertiary kag secondary cooperatives. The vote cast by the delegate shall be deemed as votes cast by the members thereof. However, the bylaws of a cooperative other than a primary may provide for voting by proxy, no? Magsiling kay kita kung sa primary cooperative, wala kita ya proxy voting, no? Pero sa the bylaws nga other than primary, no, sa mga secondary tertiary, voting by proxy means allowing a delegate of a cooperative to represent or vote in behalf of another delegate of the same cooperative. Ano naman ang ara sa aton nga Article 37? Amo ini ang komposisyon sang aton nga mga Board of Directors. Ang aton nga nga mga Board of Directors, no, pwede siya makompose sang not less than 5. Kag hindi man siya magsubra sa 15 members. Kag ini sila tanan gina-elect sang aton nga General Assembly for a term fixed in the bylaws, no? Na fix na sa bylaws, no? Kamo na makabutang, but not to exceeding a term of 2 years and shall hold office until their successors are duly elected and qualified or until jury removed for cause, no? Pagkatandaan no, not less than 5, not more than 15. And then, ang mga powers niya sang ato nga Board of Directors under Article 38, sila ini ang responsable, no, ang aton junta direktiba mong responsable sa strategic planning, direction setting, and policy formulating activities ang aton nga kooperatiba. Any member of the cooperative who under the bylaws of the cooperative has the right to vote and who possesses all the qualifications and none of the disqualifications provided in the bylaws shall be eligible for election as director, no? Eligible kita basta member kita sang kooperatiba naton kaga-possess kay sa tatanan nga qualifications, no, nga gina-require para maging board of directors, pwede kita kaparan for election. And then the cooperative may by resolution of its board of directors admit as director or committee member one appointed by any financing institution from which the cooperative received financial assistance solely, no, nga ma-provide siya sang technical knowledge not available within its membership. Such director or committee member need not be a member of the cooperative and shall have no powers, right, nor responsibilities except to provide technical assistance as required by the cooperative. Technical assistance lang ang ihatag. The members of the board of director, no, tandaan no, ang board of directors shall not hold any other position directly involved in the day-to-day operation and management of the cooperatives. Which means, kung board of director ka, hindi ka pwede maging managers ng inyong kooperatiba at the same time. Kag isa pagid, ang any person engaged in a business similar to that of the cooperative who in any way has a conflict of interest, no, nga may conflict of interest with it, is disqualified from election as a director of said cooperative. Disqualified man siya kung may conflict of interest. Amoy niyang supplemental natin nga memorandum circular, ang MC number 2020-31, diri ang provision disqualification under Article 39 and Article 42 of RA 9520. Siling niya diri sa Article 39 nga bag-o lang, no, the members of the board of directors shall not hold any other position directly involved in the day-to-day operation and management of the cooperative. And then, any person engaged nung bago ko lang gin-discuss. And then, ang Article 42, officers of the cooperative, no two or more persons with relationships up to the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, nor shall any person engage in a business similar to that of the cooperative, nor who in any other manner has interest in conflict with the cooperative shall serve as unappointed officers. No? Makita natin sa foregoing provisions, a member of the board of directors is prohibited, no, to get involved in daily operations of the cooperative. No, siling ko na gina, hindi sa pwede ka serve as manager or managing director. Moreover, a cooperative member engaged in business similar no nga pareho bala sa iya sang kooperatiba nga business to that of the cooperative in any way has conflict of interest is disqualified from election as director of the cooperative. Kag the same man na ang sa mga appointive officers, they must not be engaged in a business similar to or has a conflict of interest with the cooperative. In addition, only one person, no, isa lang ka person with relationship up to the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity is allowed to be appointed. Elected officers are the members, no, magambal kan kita elective ng mga officers, amo ni sila ang members ng board of directors, audit and the election committee, no, kay amo ining gina-elect naton during General Assembly. Ang appointed officers include the secretary, treasurer, members of the Ethics, Mediation, and Conciliation Committee, kag also Gender and Development Committee, kag ang mga other committees pa nga as may be necessary for the conduct of the affairs of the cooperative nga gin-create nga need sa operations ng atong co-op. Under Article 40, meeting of the board and quorum requirement. Sa primary cooperatives, ang regular meetings naton shall be held at least once a month na gamitin ang aton board of directors to discuss the progress ng ilang mga operations sa ilang kooperatiba. Special meetings of the board of directors, no, pwede man kapatawag special meetings at any time upon the call of the chairperson or majority of the members of the board, no. Pwede gid kapatawag special meeting ang board. Provided, no, nga ang written notice of the meeting specifying the agenda of the special meeting shall be given to all members of the board at least 1 week before the said meeting. Maka-special meeting kita ang patawag sang aton nga chairperson or majority members of the board, pero ang aton written notice iyanong gid naton nga 1 week before the meeting. And then, a majority of the members of the board shall constitute a quorum for the conduct of business unless the bylaws provide otherwise. Dapat, no, may quorum kita. And then, ang Article 40, meeting of the boards and quorum requirement, ang mag-meeting ang aton mga board of director, hindi siya pwede by ka-attend by proxy lang, no, dapat ara gid siya during sa pag-meeting. Ang Article 41, vacancy on the board of directors, no? Actually, right now, damo, naniniga pamangkot, no? Members, no? Party sa vacancy naton. Any vacancy in the board of directors other than by expiration of term may be filled by the vote of at least a majority of the remaining directors if it's still constituting a quorum. Pwede gali, no? Kung may vacancy na ma-fill sang ato majority of the remaining directors. Otherwise, the vacancy must be filled by the General Assembly in a regular or special meeting called for the purpose. Pwede man kapatawag sang kung lapitan ang atong sa General Assembly nga ma-fill up dira. Kung hindi gani, pwede makapatawag special meeting para sa amo na nga agenda. A director so elected to fill a vacancy shall be elected only for the unexpired term of his predecessor in office. Which means, kung may 1 year nga nabilinto ang pag-ailisan niya, ang iya nga term, 1 year na lang man ang iya nga pagapungkuan, no, bilang board of director. Then the board of Article 42, the board of the director shall elect from among themselves only the chairman and vice chairman and elect or appoint other officers of the cooperative from outside of the board in accordance with their bylaws. All officers shall serve during good behavior and shall not be removed except for cause after due hearing. Loss of confidence shall not be a valid ground for removal unless evidenced by acts or omission causing loss of confidence in the honesty and integrity of such officer. No two or more persons with relationship up to the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, nor any person engaged in a business similar to that of the cooperative or who may in any manner has interest in conflict with the cooperative shall serve as appointed officer. May supplemental kita diri nga memorandum circular amo ini ang 2011-04 amo ning legal interpretation of Article 42 of the Philippine Cooperative Code of 2008. Magamba kita, officers of the cooperative as provided under Article 5. Sino ining mga officers, no? Sa ato na nga RA 9520, members of the Board of Directors. Ang members man sa mga different nga mga committee nga created by the General Assembly. Ang general manager nato, no? Officers in asang co-op or the chief executive officer. Ang aton secretary, treasurer, kag members holding other positions as may be provided for the bylaws of the cooperative. Kung magsiling kita nga officers elected by the General Assembly, sino ini sila? Amo ini ang members ng aton nga Board of Directors, ang Audit kag Election Committee. Amo lang ini ang gina-elect sang General Assembly. Kag kun office, ang sino naman ini mga officers nga appointed by the Board of Directors? Amo ini sila ang Treasurer, Secretary, members of the Mediation and Conciliation Committee, members of Ethics Committee, members of other committees unless otherwise provided in the bylaws, no, kung ano na provide sa ila bylaws, kag members of the Board of Directors appointed by the remaining directors for vacancy other than expiration of term. Amo ining mga appointed nga mga officers. Under the Article 42, there is no provision for elected officers. No? Sa mga elected officers, no, wala provision with relationship up to the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity to hold the aforesaid elected positions in the same cooperative provided they have been elected by the General Assembly. These are the officers referred to in paragraph B hereof, which means, no, nga kung na-elect ka mo ya, no, wala na sila na diga ga-prohibit sa third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity. Para lang to yan sa mga appointive officers. The provision applies to the officers to, in paragraph C hereof, shall be no two or more persons with relationship up to the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity to hold any of the above-mentioned appointed positions in the same cooperative. However, an elected officer, ang isa ka elected nga officer can have one appointed relative within the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, provided that under no circumstances shall be a relationship up to the third civil degree of consanguinity or affinity among the appointed officers. No, pwede sila ka-appoint isa. Para sa reference, no, kag maintindihan ta anong ginatawag nga relationship by consanguinity. Kung magambal gani kita first degree, amo niya ang ginatawag nga parent to child. For example, ang tatay to sa iya bata, amo man ang nanay sa iya bata, amo ina siya ang first degree. Sa second degree, grandparents to grandchildren, no? Ang lola sa iya nga apo, no, amo nang second degree, kag ang isa brother to sister. And then, ang isa, ang third degree, uncle to child. No, amo ng relationship natin. Kung uncle to child, third degree na. Auntie to child, third degree naman ina. Ka-great-grandparents to great-grandchildren. Amo inang pagkatandaan natin sa relationship by consanguinity. Kung sa relationship by affinity naman, ang first degree, parent-in-law to daughter, or son-in-law, no? Parent-in-law to daughter-in-law or son-in-law. Amo ina siya ang first degree by affinity. Ang second degree, brother-in-law to sister-in-law. And then, ang maghambal kita third degree, great-grandparent-in-law to great-granddaughter or great-grandson-in-law, uncle to aunt-in-law to niece kag nephew, in-law. Amo ina kung magsiling kita nga relationship by affinity. No, tayo naintindihan tayo ini ang relationship by consanguinity kag relationship by affinity kay importante gid ini sa mga pag-appoint sang posisyon sa atong kooperatiba. Under sa Article 43, amo ini ang Committee of Cooperatives. The bylaws may create an executive committee to be appointed by the Board of Directors with such by powers and duties as may be delegated to it in the bylaws or by majority vote of all the members of the Board of Directors. The bylaws shall provide for the creation, no? Dapat may kita audit, election, mediation, and conciliation, ethics, and such other committees as may be necessary for the proper conduct of the affairs of the cooperative. Sa nasiling ko na kaina nga ang members ng both sang audit kag election committees shall be elected by the General Assembly, kag ang nabilin ang rest maging appointed by the board. The audit committee shall be directly accountable ni sila kag responsible to the General Assembly kay elected sila sang GA. It shall have the power and duty to continually monitor the adequacy and effectiveness of the cooperative's management control system and audit the performance of the cooperative and its various responsibility centers. Amo ina ang powers ang kag duties ang aton nga audit committee. Unless otherwise provided in the bylaws, the board, in case of vacancy in said committee, may call an election to fill the vacancy or appoint a person to fill the same subject to the provision that the person elected or appointed shall serve only for the unexpired term, portion of term, no? Kung may vacancy, no, pag-remember gid naton nga pwede ka patawag election or ma-appoint person to fill the same subject, kag pagatandaan naton nga ang iyang nga ipag-serve, no, ang unexpired portion of term lang. Under Article 44, functions and responsibilities of directors, officers, and committee members. The functions and responsibilities of the directors, officers, and committee members, as well as their training requirements, ila training requirements shall be in accordance with the rules and regulation issued by the authority. Last February 19, gindiscuss na ining ang Memorandum Circular naton nga 2015-09 revised guidelines implementing the training requirements of cooperative officers nga which is nga very important ini ang mandatory training naton para sa compliance naton nga makakuha kita sang certificate of compliance kay isa ini ka requirement ang list of officers ang training undertaken isa ini sa nga gina-campaign gid nga maka-training ang tanan nga officers naton sa aton kooperatiba. Nasiling ko tatugina mga officers from the board of directors to the committees to the manager, secretary, and treasurer dapat maka-training sila sang aton nga mandatory trainings which is nga fundamentals of cooperative and governance and management of cooperative. Ang MC 2013-03 Supplemental Rules on the Training Requirements of Cooperatives, Director, Officers, and Committee Members. To ensure that strict compliance of the authority adopts the following supplemental guidelines. Number 1, inclusion in the cooperative election guidelines. Cooperative shall include in their election guidelines a policy requiring all officers to comply with the mandatory trainings requirements and the person responsible to ensure compliance thereof, which shall be election committee in case of elective officers, and in the case of appointed officers, the board of directors. The guidelines shall also provide for the disqualification in case of non-compliance. Dapat i-include ta ini sa aton nga election guidelines. Kag number 2, notice to the cooperative. Upon finding that an officer of a cooperative has not complied, wala siya ka-complied with the required training, the authority shall notify in writing the cooperative of such fact and direct the cooperative to ensure the officer's compliance of the training requirements during their remaining term. Sa nabili nila nga term, dapat maka-training sila. Ang sanctions for non-compliance or failure to comply with the mandatory trainings, ano ni mga sanctions niya? For the cooperative officer, ang failure of the concerned cooperative officer to comply with the training requirements during his or her term shall be a ground for his or her disqualification as future officer of the cooperative in any position until he or she has complied with the required trainings for that position, no? Kung wala sa ka-training, no, isa ini ka-ground for disqualification. Kag for the cooperative, no, kung sa cooperative naman niya, anong sanctions? Willful failure of the concerned cooperative to comply with the training requirements for its officers despite notice shall be a ground for the non-issuance of the certificate of compliance to the cooperative for the next immediate year. No, pagkatandaan to sa ato mga kooperatiba, no, isa ini ka ground, no, nga sanctions nga hindi kita ma-issuehan sang certificate of compliance kung wala kita sa mga training. Under naman sa Article 45, liability of directors, officers, and committee members. Anong ilang mga liability? Director, officers, and committee members who willfully act, knowingly vote for or assent to patently unlawful acts, or who are guilty of gross negligence or bad faith in directing the affairs of the cooperative, or acquire any personal or pecuniary interest in conflict with their duty as such directors, officers, or committee member shall be liable jointly and severally for all damages or profits resulting therefrom to the cooperative members and other persons, no? Liable sila. Then when a director, officer, or committee member attempts to acquire or acquires in violation of his duty any interest or equity adverse to the cooperative in respect to any manner which has been reposed in him in confidence, he shall, as a trustee of the cooperative, be liable for damages and for doable profits which otherwise would have accrued to the cooperative. Under Article 46, compensation, in the absence niya sang any provision in the bylaws fixing the compensation, the director shall not receive any compensation, no, kung wala ini na provide sa ila bylaws except for reasonable per diems. Provided that the directors and officers shall not be entitled to any per diem when in the preceding calendar year, no, ang aton nga cooperative reported a net loss or had a dividend rate less than the official inflation rate for the same year. No? Pagpadumdumon gina naton nga hindi sila entitled ang aton nga officers kung nag net loss ang aton kooperatiba. And then any compensation other than per diems may be granted to directors by a majority vote of the members with voting rights at a regular or special general meeting specifically called for the purpose, which means pwede gid kung na-approve sang aton nga majority vote sang aton nga ang General Assembly. Provided further that no additional compensation other than per diem shall be paid during the first year of existence of any cooperative. Kung sa first year naton, no, per diems lang gid ang pwede naton, wala kita pwede hatag sa first year of existence ang atong kooperatiba. The compensation of officers of the cooperative as well as the members of the committees created pursuant to this code or in its bylaws may be fixed in the bylaws. Unless already fixed in the bylaws, the compensation of all other employees shall be determined by the board of directors. Kung may mga employee, kita nga additional sa aton nga sa nga kinahanglan naton sa operasyon sang atong kooperatiba, ang board of directors ni naton ang ma-determine. Ang supplemental ni naton sa article, ang MC, ang supplemental naton, MC number 2013-17, clarificatory guidelines in the implementation of Article 46 of Republic Act number 9540. Diri nga MC nakastate diri sa Section 2 ang iya purpose. The authority issues these guidelines in order to ensure the proper implementation of Article 46 of RA 9520 and to enhance the sense of accountability and fiduciary responsibility of officers of cooperative as trustees of the members. For purpose of these guidelines, the following term shall mean as Compensation is a brand term that includes all forms of remuneration. It refers to any remuneration given for services rendered like salary, which is compensation paid regularly as by the month. It does not imply an immediate payment or direct return, nor the payment of cash fare or its equivalent. It refers to any remuneration by whatever name or euphemism it is designated. Kung magsiling naman kita nga per diem, refers to the allowance given as reimbursement for extra expense incurred by one in the performance of his duties, no? Allowance lang na. Kung magsiling naman kita honorarium, a gesture of appreciation for the service of one with expertise of professional standing in recognition of his broad and superior knowledge in specific fields. It is given to official or employee not as a matter of obligation but appreciation for service which admits of no compensation in money. Hindi ini siya nga appreciation ng ini ang honorarium. Primary basis of and prohibition on compensation to directors. As general rule, the bylaws of the cooperative shall fix the compensation of the board of the directors. However, if the bylaws of the cooperative had not fixed it, the directors are not entitled, kung wala na fixed, to receive any compensation from the cooperative. Pagkatandaan gina naton, kung wala nakabutang sa aton bylaws, hindi kita entitled ang aton board of directors to receive any compensation. Considering that the bylaws have not fixed such compensation, only reasonable per diem shall be given to the directors of the cooperative. Under Section 5, alternative basis of granting compensation to directors, notwithstanding with the provision of the Section 2 hereof, to the contrary, any compensation other than per diem may be given to the directors if such compensation is authorized by majority vote of all the members with voting rights at a regular or general assemblies meeting specifically called for the purpose. Pwede siya kung na-approve sang aton nga General Assembly. Directors represent all the members, shareholders in the capacity of trustee for them, and such directors shall not use their office as directors for their personal benefit at the expense of the cooperative and the member shareholder. For this purpose, the grant of compensation other than per diem to the director shall be made only after the adoption of the General Assembly resolution approving such compensation. Under sa Section 6, suspension of the grant of per diem. The grant of per diem shall be suspended when any of the following adverse circumstances occurs in the cooperative. Una, kung ang cooperative nato nag-incurred sa net loss in the preceding year. Kag also, ang dividend natin rate the cooperative fell below the official inflation rate during the year. During such period, the directors and officers shall not receive any per diem from the cooperative. Such suspension of the grant shall be strictly implemented until such time that the cooperative recovers from such adverse circumstances. Ang resumption sang grant of per diem to directors and officers shall not be compounded. No recovery of per diem during the period of suspension shall be allowed. Under Section 7, entitlement during first year of existence, only reasonable per diem shall be allowed during the first year of existence of the cooperative. Under Section 8, compensation of the committee members. Compensation of the committee members of the cooperative may be fixed in the bylaws of the cooperative. Ang compensation naman niya sang employee of the cooperative shall be determined by the board of directors subject to the existing laws. Kag ang under sa Section 10, monitoring, all inspector or examiners of the authority shall include the implementation of Article 46 of RA 9520 and this memorandum circular as one of the items for inspection or examination, and the same shall be reflected in the inspection or examination report. Dealings under sa Article 47, dealings of directors, officers, or committee members. A contract of the cooperative with one or more of its directors, officers, or committee members is voidable at the option of such cooperative unless all the following conditions are present, no? Una, presence of such director in the board meeting in which the contract was approved was not necessary to constitute a quorum for such meeting. Ikadua, ang vote niya sa mga director hindi siya necessary for the approval of the contract and the contract is fair, reasonable under the circumstances. In case of an officer or committee member, the contract with the officer or committee member had been previously dapat authorized by the General Assembly or by the Board of Directors. Where any of the first two conditions set forth in the preceding paragraph is absent, in the case of a contract with a director, such contract pwede natong kung absence tong duwa may be ratified by a 3/4 votes of all the members with voting rights in a meeting called for the purpose. Provided nga ang full disclosure of the adverse interest of the directors involved is made at such meeting and that the contract is fair and reasonable under circumstances. Under sa Article 48, disability of a director. A director who by virtue of his officer acquires for himself an opportunity which should belong to the cooperative shall be liable for damages and must account for double profits that otherwise have accrued to the cooperative by refunding the sum unless it has been ratified by 3/4 votes of all the members with voting rights. This provision shall be applicable notwithstanding the fact that the director used his own funds in the venture. Under Article 49, illegal use of confidential information, a director or officer or an associate of a director or officer who in connection with a transaction relating to shares of cooperative or a debt obligation of cooperative for his benefit or advantage or that of an associate make use of confidential information if generally known, might reasonably be expected to affect materially the value of the share of the debt obligation shall be held. Liable to compensate sa any person for a direct loss suffered by that person as a result of the transaction unless the information was known at the reasonably should have been known to the person at the time of the transaction. And accountable to the cooperative for any direct benefit or advantage received or yet to be received by him or his associates as a result of the transaction. The cooperative shall take the necessary steps to enforce the liabilities described in subsection A. Article 50, removal. All complaints for the removal of any elected officer shall be filed with the Board of Directors. Such officer shall be given the opportunity to be heard, ang mga for complaints for removal. Majority of the Board of Directors may place the officer concerned under preventive suspension pending the solution of the investigation. Upon finding of a prima facie evidence of guilt, the Board shall present its recommendation for the removal to the General Assembly. An elective officer may be removed by 3/4 votes of the regular members present and constituting a quorum in a regular or special General Assembly meeting called for the purpose. The officer concerned shall be given the opportunity to be heard at the said assembly. Ang ara pagid sa aton other provisions of RA 9520, issuance on administration, under sa Article 27, any government officers and employees, any officer or employee of the authority shall be disqualified to be elected or appointed to any position in a cooperative, provided that the disqualification does not exceed to a cooperative organized by the officers or employees of the authority. Ang silingon diri kami nga mga empleyado sang CDA, kung member kami sang isa ka kooperatiba, hindi kami pwede manging officers. Pwede lang kami maging officers sang amon nga kooperatiba nga kami ang nag-organize ang mga employees ng authority. And then, all elective officials of the government shall be ineligible to become officers and directors of cooperative provided that the disqualification does not exceed to a party list representative being an officer of a cooperative he or she represent, which means magambal kita elective officials from the lowest position, from the kagawad sa aton barangay, hindi pwede maging officers ng isa ka kooperatiba. And also, any government employee may in the discharge, pwede ma-discharge sa iya duties, kag obligations kung member siya sa cooperative be allowed by the head of office concerned to use its official time for attendance no sa mga General Assembly meeting, Board of Directors and committee meetings kag other conferences no kag mga cooperative seminars provided nga ang iya nga operations of the office concerned are not adversely affected. Okay? And then there's an MC nga regarding MC number 2011-03 policy regarding sa Article 27 sang RA 9520. For uniform interpretation of the above cited provision, please be advised that the ineligibility of officers and directors of cooperatives shall commence no upon lang sa assumption of office. This interpretation is anchored on the fact that an elective officer shall become an elected official only no upon commencement of his official functions as public officer.
5 minutes na lang from Miss Mai.
Yes, Mammers.
So, marami gid may tani nga i-share pa nato ni pero waay na ta sing tiyempo. Kay up to 3 o'clock lang kita dire sa aton oras ang kooperatiba. So gusto ko lang i-highlight no May kay kanamian gito ko kainas ang imo gin share nga about the interpretation of Article 46 regarding sa per diems, compensation and honorarium. So ginaton ni kay timing gid subong kay nagahiliwat kita may sang General Assembly. So mas manami gid kun daw ma-reiterate mo liwat kung ano ang per diems, kung ano ang compensation kag kung ano ang honorarium.
Sige, Mammers, no? Kung magsiling ka kita compensation, amoy ini ang refers to any remuneration given for services rendered no like sang salary no sang aton mga empleyado which is a compensation paid ginabayaran naton ni regularly as by month. It does not imply an immediate payment or direct return nor the payment of cash fare of its equivalent no. Amo ina siya no example yan na salary. Kung magsiling kita nga per diems naman ni siya ga-refer lang ini sa allowance no given as reimbursement of extra expense incurred by one in performance of his duties no. Pwede gid naton sila matagaan sang allowance. Kung maghambal naman kita honorarium, ang ginatawag nga honorarium amo ini ang gesture sang appreciation for the service of one with expertise of professional standing in recognition of his broad and superior knowledge in specific fields, which means ginahatag ini sa official or empleyado sang sa kooperatiba as obligation for appreciation sang iya nga service nga ginhatag which admits no compensation in money, Mercy.
Okay, salamat Miss Mai. So wala na gid sa tiyempo Miss Mai ini last message sa aton nga tagpalamati kag viewers ang sini nga programa.
Sige no, ang ano lang ako no, maghahatag lang ako sang gamay nga information no, nga sa tanan nga kooperatiba balato nga naka-access na sang aton nga i-co-opris last year no, in order nga makasulod kita sa aton nga kais nga step 1 and step 11, subong ginapangabay namon kamo magpadala kamo sang letter requesting to access ang inyo mga i-co-opris account no, to update the step 2 to step 10 naton nga sa dito sa aton nga i-co-opris kag also nga ma-update man naton ang aton nga latest amendment details of your cooperative kay kung makita ninyo dito no ang inyo lang ang gagwa no kung magsulod kita sa i-co-opris for the first time no ang aton gid nga una nga pagre-release ang aton kooperatiba sa RA 9520 amo ina ang data dito nga gasulod kag kung maka-update na kita sa aton nga i-co-opris dira na no kung may amendment kita pwede na naton ma-process online, Mercy.
Okay. So, madamo gid nga masalamat Miss Myla sang imo nga maayo nga pag-eksplikar parte sa administration o kung pagpadalagan sang aton nga kooperatiba nga makita naton sa chapter 14 chapter 4 sang aton Republic Act 9520, the Philippine Cooperative Code of 2008 plus the related MC nga maintindihan naton ang provision didto sa administration. So may mga announcement lang ako before ako magpasalamat sa aton nga partner, ang Diyos Gugma Development Cooperative. May ara kita paghiwaton nga Fundamentals of Cooperatives for Small Co-ops online sa March 23 to 24, 2023. May ara man kita Business Continuity Management nga paghiwaton sa March 28, 2023. Again, this is online. Maghambal gati kita nga Business Continuity Management, paano kita mag-manage, paano kita magbalik kung ang aton kooperatiba maka-experience sa mga kalamidad, human and caused by human and non-human situations. So, may ara pagid kita bookkeeping and accounting for PCA beneficiaries, no? Kag ang liwat-liwaton ko ang deadline sang mandatory reports kag pagkuha sang certificate of compliance sa CDA sa April 30, 2023. Kag ang deadline sang aton at tier kung naga-observe ang cooperative sang calendar year April 30 kag kon fiscal year April 15. So mga abyan, ang aton third episode sang aton oras sang kooperatiba sa April 16, 2023. Hope nga magpamati liwat kamo kag magtan-aw sa aton gid nga programa kay siling ko kaina ang tanan nga sets of information nga ginahatag namon sa inyo tama ka importante sa pagpadalagan sang aton nga kooperatiba. So again and again, thank you very much ang Diyos Gugma Development Cooperative. So maayong hapon liwat.